So now we're actually going to start studying for the AWS cloud provider. Now, what are we going to really need for this course? So, I've made a list here in a file called what do I need.txt, and basically it outlines what I'm going to actually need for this course. There may be other items that will come along, but we'll add those as we require. So basically the first thing you're actually going to need is a computer and a web browser. That makes sense, right? You really can't learn anything much about computers without having some type of computer and web browser to be able to practice. You're going to need some Notepad, and that can be Notepad++ or any other Notepad provider of your choice. It really doesn't make a difference. You know, it's what you feel comfortable with on using and what your knowledge is. Maybe you kind of use a different Notepad provider every single day. You know, you have a different way and different method of how you would actually take notes. Use the same Notepad provider. It really doesn't make an actual difference. You're just trying to get somewhere where you can basically just take some notes. You're also going to need a GitHub account. So the GitHub account is where basically we'll sort of say, I will give you access to my YouTube series here for the repo. There's steps inside of the description here on how to do that. Send me an email. We'll get you added to that GitHub repo, and then you'll basically have all access to this, to these files, even the kind of Kubernetes exams here. But really the one we're going to concentrate on the GitHub access is this series 4. So if I kind of go into GitHub here, you can basically sort of see, here's my GitHub account here for Cloud Solutions Architect. And you can see here, series 4 is the one we're basically going to be adding to, okay? Very, very simple, very, very straightforward. One thing that I kind of like to also do is actually, I'm on a Mac here, so I install GitHub desktop. I have that actually installed. I found it really, really handy, really useful. It can basically allow you to see the changes and check in your changes really quickly. Everybody may have a kind of different way of doing things on the GitHub, but that's something you will definitely have to have a look at to see if you can make your life easier and quicker. Because again, you don't want to be making your life all about GitHub, right? You're trying to learn AWS, have your Notepad, have your GitHub account set up, have your access to the GitHub, have your access to notes really kind of quickly, and just really kind of hammer along on the actual AWS side. You're going to need an AWS account. I'm going to create a separate video for that, obviously. You will probably need administrator permissions here, on this AWS account, but we'll kind of get into that when we get through it. We'll also need a CLI, and some interface into the actual AWS account. I'll cover that in a separate video. It's also very good to have some type of email, that can be allowed for testing, whether it's a test email or, when you want to set up a temporary study email, whichever way you'd like to kind of do it. But some type of email will probably be preferable coming in the future. Willingness to learn, absolutely. It's vital. I sort of try to teach people here that may not have as much experience as other people. Um, and one thing that kind of really kind of shows through and shines through is really where people actually have a really good willingness to learn. They want to learn. That's exactly what their focus is. They want to get further along in their career and their personal lives, whatever it may be. But they actually have that willingness to learn. Some of the other tools that I actually use is VS Code. You can sort of see it's open here with my GitHub. Um, Tmux Terminal, I use iTerm. I love iTerm. We'll get into that. Draw.io is another tool that I basically use for drawing kind of, basic whiteboards. And then kind of real kind of, whiteboard itself. I actually have one here in my studio. So that can be handy too. But if you don't have a whiteboard, don't go out and, if you really don't need to spend the money, save some money, blank pieces of paper work exactly the same. That's what I would use if I kind of go to the office. I don't carry around a big whiteboard with me. Um, and one of the kind of important notes I have here is let's try to keep on the free tier. So AWS has multiple kind of, payment plans and options on how you can kind of, increase the power and the spending of the money. But basically what we're going to do here is make sure that we kind of, try and keep on the free tier as much as possible so that we don't spend extra money that we basically don't need to spend. So anything, that we do stand up and create, we should delete after. That's kind of fundamental to when you're learning any type of cloud provider. So they're the kind of tools that I've kind of listed here, and let's continue in the next one.